to Stack the Deck with the House of Cards podcast. The show where we break down the art of creative real estate investing. Join us as we dive into the world of real estate with insider tips and tricks for making your investments go further. From buying with no money down to flipping properties for profit, we've got you covered. Plus, stay tuned for expert guest speakers who will share their knowledge and experience in this ever-changing market. So grab a seat and get ready to learn the secrets to success in real estate investing. And now, from Alaska to New York, your hosts, Chris James and Jesse Stanton.
Oh, good morning, Vietnam! Sorry, guys. I was practicing my Robin Williams this morning. How's everybody doing? Thank you guys for all being here. I'm super, super excited. As you guys can see, we have some amazing guests on. You guys are all on mute. I don't know if you guys knew that or not. But how's everybody doing? Chris, can you hear us? I know Chris has been having some Alaska interwebs problem over there in New York. So can you read us, Chris? We gotta get Chris like one of them soup cans with like a string on it, and we'll send it on over from Alaska to New York. I can't hear you, dude. Logan, I'm gonna unmute Logan and Eric.
Yeah,
what's up, guys?
Breaking up a little bit there, Chris. That was a super excellent official intro there. That was a great intro.
It would have been a little bit better. We had I don't know what's going on. We've got some issues going on with the interwebs or whatever today, but appreciate you guys being here. As you guys can see, we've got some special guests today. I'm really excited to dive into today's episode where we are talking money. I've shared this with you guys before, but growing up, I was always raised to think about money like a 4-letter word. Like when I was growing up, my mom always told me, she's like, Jesse, we don't have 4-letter words in my house. And of course, what she meant by that was we don't cuss in my house. There's no cuss words. You cuss. And your dad, my dad used to have this big paddle. It was almost kind of like a rowboat paddle, but it wasn't quite that long. And it had holes in this thing, dude. And he beat my ass with it. And she's like, no, that you got the paddle if there were any 4-letter words that were spoken in her house. And as I got older and I started getting into self-development and understanding more about money and debt and relationships and, properly being able to leverage myself and, bringing bringing value to other people, it's interesting how you completely change your perspective on what you thought once was, I don't know if evil is the right word, but, growing up, I always had a very scarcity mindset when it came to money and talking about money and asking people about money and how do you make more money. And when I was growing up, I thought that $100,000 a year, I was taught that $100,000 a year was like the epitome. If you were making $100,000, you might as well have been Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett, Donald Trump, or anybody making $100,000 were all in the same category. Like you had more money than you knew what to do with. Now, in order to get to $100,000 a year, did I say a month? I meant a year. $100,000 a year. And in order to get to $100,000 a year, there's really only a couple ways that you can do it. You can't ask anybody how to do it. You can't talk about it. You don't go ask people how much they're making or how to get to there. That's not acceptable. So the only other way to do it is you have to go to college. You got to spend $80,000 plus, go get a degree in underwater basket weaving. And then that's going to teach you how to make $100,000 a year. Eventually, you'll spend 4 years getting a degree. Then you'll start at the bottom of the food chain and you'll progressively start working your way up. And once you hit $100,000 a year, once you hit that 6 figures a year, your entire life changes. And for 29 years, that's how I was raised to think about money. That's how I was raised to think about success. And really understanding that if you want to make more money, you've got to talk about how to make more money. We can't keep treating money like a 4-letter word. And so, guys, I'm really excited to introduce today's guest because that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today, dropping 4-letter words, if that 4-letter word is money. So, guys, please welcome Eric Fuller and Logan Bowers. Thank you guys for being on here. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, man, it's our pleasure. Super happy for you guys to have us on and talk about these 4-letter words. I too, Jesse, was raised in a home where it was just like we didn't like money was evil. If someone was making more than $100,000 a year, like they did something bad to get it, right? Like they did something, they cheated someone, they lied to someone, like they did something nefarious to get that money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I mean, forget about making $10,000 a month or $20,000. Once you hit that 100,000, if it's more than that, it's like, oh my gosh, who are these greedy people and who are they stealing from? And there's, like you said, there's this big misconception that if you want to make tons of money, you're somehow taking away from somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that? Is that true? Is that true in your guys' experience? If you're making tons of money, then you're stealing from somebody else?
No, it's definitely not a zero-sum game. It's like the example if we're all on an island, right? And we're all just trying to get fish. So the fish would be the money. If you invent a better net, then everybody gets more fish and everybody gets more. So it's not like, oh, I have to take from somebody else.
That's an amazing way to think about that. I've never thought about it from that perspective before, but dude, 100%, man. 100%. When we're all working together and we can all weave together this net and catch way more fish, especially if you're in Alaska, dude, everybody wants freaking salmon, man. If you got the biggest dip net out there, for those of you guys who don't know what dip netting is, we take this big net. You guys have probably all seen, for everybody, we call everybody not in Alaska the lower 48. So for everybody in the lower 48, you're probably familiar with those fishing nets that you would typically see. Once you get a fish on your line, you're reeling it in, and then once it's close enough, you get your net in there and you net it and you bring it into the boat or the shore or whatever. We got this thing in Alaska called dip nets. Now it's imagine like either a square or a circular net that's probably 6 feet in diameter, and then it's just a huge gigantic net. And you literally, if this is the net right here, you tip it up on its side, and then you got the rest of the net kind of hanging over like this, and you walk straight out to the ocean, and you just sit there, dude. You just sit there, and as the salmon are swimming, they hit your net, and you flip that net over so it's on the ground, and then they're trapped inside this net, and you back up. You walk backwards, back up the beach, and now you've got, these big-ass freaking salmon. Yeah, dude, everybody wins, dude. Everybody wins, dude. When you're dip netting, I get 75 fish for the year. 75 freaking Alaskan salmon for the year by dip netting. And like you said, when you go out there versus, with a dip net versus a rod and reel, dude, everybody's winning. I think that was a perfect metaphor. Thank you for sharing that, Eric. Now, typically we only have one guest on at a time. We've got double the value today. We got two superheroes for you. Every superhero has their origin story. I would love for you guys to take a couple seconds, and we can start with Logan and then go to Eric. Introduce yourselves to everybody who doesn't know you. Where did you guys get started? How did you transition from making money a 4-letter word to know it's the golden rule? It's the golden word. It should be the first thing out of all of our mouths. How do we make more money together?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'll give the Cliff Note versions here. I could do a whole podcast on just this alone, this transition. But I grew up in a house, like we said, go to school, get a college degree. I did not do that like most of the people. I'm from South Louisiana. So Louisiana, lots of oil and gas work. So we can make 6 figures a year, sometimes multiple 6 figures a year without a degree if you're just willing to be gone from your house for, more 3/4 of the year, right? Half or 3/4 of the year. So I dropped out of college. Didn't have any real direction there. Got into the oil and gas industry, and I was like, I made it, right? I did it, mama. I'm making 6 figures a year, and don't have a degree. I'm like, this is like magic. This is so cool. So that's kind of how I started, and I had a manager at the time who kind of could see further than I could, right? Just like all mentors can, and he could see something in me that I couldn't see in myself yet, and he started urging me to invest in real estate. He had done some courses and learned a little bit. He flipped a couple houses, made a little bit of money. And at the time I had zero interest. I was, 25 years old. I just wanted to drink beer and bow hunt and party. And I didn't really care about building any wealth. I'm like, I got a 401k, like that's going to be fine. I'm just going to put money in here. And, hope was my strategy then, right? I'm going to hope that I have enough money to retire. I never thought about what that would look like, how much I would need, any of those things, right? Because you just contribute to the 401k and that's how you retire. That's how you make your money for retirement. So I was completely dependent upon the system, 100%. My 401k and Social Security didn't come through. Like that was it. That's where all my eggs were in those baskets because that's what you're supposed to do. 2015 oil prices dropped. You guys probably remember that. It went from about $120 a barrel to like $20 a barrel. And so me and my manager at that time, he gave me the book Rich Dad Poor Dad in April of 2016. We got let go together on the same day in May of 2016. And we decided to start doing the investing thing. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad and I'm like, oh my God, everything that I thought was an asset, my golf clubs, my whatever, these are all liabilities. I own nothing that makes me money and I'm super vulnerable.
Let me ask you real quick, Logan.
Yeah,
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, dude. No,
you're good.
I had the same experience, man, of reading that book. And as I'm reading it, like, it's like, it didn't take reading it and then years later to look back at that and be like, oh my gosh, wow, this changed. But like, as I was reading it, I was like summoning thoughts that I had never thought before. Did you have that same experience? And like, what was that like? Because I want to stay here for a second because that transformation, when you start thinking that, oh my gosh, this is actually possible. It's the same thought when you read that book and you start having other thoughts about what asset is and what a liability is. It's the same thought that will get you from $10,000 a month to $100,000 a month to $500,000 a month. Yep. It's the same thought of, well, what if I could? It's the exact same thought. And I want to stay here for a second. I kind of want to just get your take on what was going through your mind as you're reading that book, because it's such a transformational part for a lot of us.
It is. And so I was really still didn't fully grasp the concept of using other people's money. Like I read it, I knew it here, but I didn't know it here. Right. So like I knew it in my head, but I didn't know it in my heart, what that really meant. So I was kind of like confined at that time to like, only for 30 days because I was only employed for 30 more days. But I was confined to what can I buy? And I had about 30 grand at the time. And I was like, what can I buy with 30 grand? Like, and the only real things I looked at, like some vending machines and some arcade games. The thing that I settled on was like, all right, I can go get one of these portable ice places. I know it's probably a joke in Alaska, but we have portable ice stations here in South Louisiana where like, it's really, we buy a lot of ice, tons and tons of ice. And you set them up and you get them set up in a location and people pay and they get bulk ice. Is cheaper than going and get a bag at the gas station. So these bulk ice places was what I was looking at. And I was digging into the weeds and I kind of had got all that stuff. So I was like, all right, I have some money. What are the things that are in reach for me to use this money for that can start generating income for me? Right. That was the big thing, is like, I want to generate income from the available money that I had, and ice, put in one of these little bulk ice places was the only thing that I could conceive at that point. And then we get let go 30 days later and we like, all right, I sit around, feel sorry for myself for a while. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to do something about this. I had talked about this much like probably a lot of people that are watching this right now. If you're still in your W-2 or you just got introduced to real estate, or you've probably been thinking about this way longer than you've been taking action on it. And the thinking about it does nothing. The action is everything. I was lucky enough that I got exited out of my job. I didn't have to quit it. So I saw that as a gift. If I didn't have to build up the courage to quit my job, someone did it for me. So like I didn't think of it as a gift at the time, but it was a gift. And so I was like, look, it's enough. We've been talking about starting businesses for 3 years. Like we had been talking about real estate and businesses and all these ideas and never did anything with them. And that was kind of the catalyst to, I was sitting on my sofa applying for a job at Halliburton, who I'd worked for previous to the company that I got let go from. And in the same exact job that I had years before. And I'm like, this is the definition of insanity. Like, I'm not going to go back and work in the exact same job that I had before. Like now or never. Like now is the time. If I'm ever going to try this thing and it's going to flop, like what a perfect opportunity. So we end up putting the house under contract about 60 days later, found a flip. And we were going to flip houses and buy single family homes was our plan. And we didn't have much of a plan outside of that, but we did that. And the first house we had to learn how to raise money on, the very first one, because guess what? We had 800 credit scores. Mine was in the high 700s. My partner was not 800. But we had $150,000 lifestyles, but now we only had our wives' income. My wife made about 30 grand a year, and his wife made about $45,000 a year. Both college degrees, by the way, right?
Mhm.
One's a dental assistant, one's a teacher. And the banks are like, dude, this is great that you have all this credit score. And this is great that you guys have, great history, but like, how are you going to pay this loan back? And we're like, dude, we got this house at like half price almost. Like, what do you mean? We're going to put 60 grand in. We were borrowing 60 grand. We each had 30,000 to put in. We were buying the house for 100. It needed 20,000 of rehab, and it was going to resell for like 160. So it was a good deal, solid, like very, very good base hit for our first deal.
Yep.
And the banks all told us no. So we went to like 11 banks. They all said no, 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 no. So we ended up raising private money for the other 60 grand. We found the right person that was like, this is a no risk deal, basically. Like, this is a no brainer. Of course, I'll loan you the 60 grand. And so we raised private money on our very first deal. And so that is when I really understood the power of like what Robert Kiyosaki talks about of like rich dad, poor dad. We did a deal and we used some of our money, but after that, we went on to flip dozens of houses, buy dozens of rental properties without using any of our money. Because we were like, all right, well, if we can do this with some of our money, how do we do this without any of it? And so we built a portfolio. We ended up splitting years later and kind of split that portfolio up, sold some of them off. And then I started buying again with some, different partners. And currently over that time period, I've done all kind of stuff, mobile home parks, apartment complexes, flips, duplexes, quadplexes. I've pretty much flipped our own kind of a lot of the residential style real estate. And right now, currently, I think we have about 150 doors. So most of those, all the recent ones we bought are all sub 2 deals. Because again, we use somebody else's credit, somebody else's financing, and take over an asset that requires me to put a little bit of my cash in. But that's the only risk I'm taking. I'm using the bulk of somebody else's resources to acquire. It's just golden. So I've built a portfolio over that time period, kind of just using those principles. And I invest my money into deals, but I only invest my money into the very best deals. And the rest of the deals that I still want to do, I use other people's money for, still to this day.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. There was a couple things that you said there, bro, and thank you for sharing that. There was a couple things you said there, and one thing that stuck out in particular was you said I was lucky enough to get let go.
Yeah.
That is a very interesting perspective to have, and words matter, dude. Like when we're wanting to do big things, when we're wanting to take that next step, and being able to look back at that and be like, dude, man, woo! I won the lottery, man. This gave me the opportunity to go and just chase my dreams and do all sorts of really neat things, man. So I love that you said that. So that was one thing I just wanted to kind of hammer down on. And then you had this thought where you were like, the banks aren't going to give me any money, and I got to go raise 60 grand. Talk to me about that for a second, because I know there are tons of people that are watching this right now, and people who will end up watching and listening to this at a later point as well. When they hear Logan went and wanted to rehab this house, he didn't have $60,000, went to the bank, they told him no. And in his head, he was like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to go raise 60 grand. Tell me about that process because I know tons of people here that are watching it right now. And like I said, we'll be watching it, whether they're in the same position, but how did they go do that? Like, what's step one to going and raising private capital? Like, where did you pay for any sort of education to get the idea to go do this? Or like, tell me about that for a second.
So I met this guy in a Bible study, and it was in a wealthier neighborhood, gated community on the golf course. And this guy would walk in every time, and this is a bunch of old rich white guys, right? And there's this young black guy that would walk in, and I'm like, this dude's way younger than all these people. I gathered through a couple Bible studies that he lived in the neighborhood. And I'm like, all right, this dude has something that I want. I didn't know what it was at the time, but it was confidence is what he had that I wanted. And so one day, the guy that invited me to the Bible study, they were planning lunch, and I just kind of said, hey, can I come with you guys? And they were like, yeah. So I kind of, tagged along to their lunch. The guy that invited me to the Bible study ended up being late, and the guy, Nate, it was early. So we got some time just one-on-one for about 30 minutes. And I was like, man, just tell me what you do. And he had a similar story. Dropped out, got into car sales, then started buying real estate, and then started buying businesses and turning them around. And I was like, man, will you teach me to do what you do? Like, this is literally like, we just got into this boat. So some people would say coincidence. I would say is God's providence in my life, right? And he was there at the right time. And so he was encouraging us the whole time. He had, side note, he taught us how to be business owners and how to make decisions. He had all of the resources. He had 60 grand he could have gave to us. But instead, again, he gave us the gift to go do it on our own and not to do it for us. And he was like, hey, why don't you go ask some people? And I'm like, ask people? He's like, yeah. He's like, banks are not the only ones with money. People have money too. And I was like, okay. So I went and started asking friends and family, and they were all like, they were kind of in that position where they loved me enough that they wanted to see me succeed, but they could not see the forest for the trees, right? So they thought what I was doing was risky and scary. So in their love for me, most of your friends and family may have done this, they were telling me, be careful.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Because it was unknown and fearful to them. So they're like, they were trying to hold me back. They were trying to protect me. That was the only way they knew how, was to tell me, watch out. This is risky. Right. So that didn't turn up anything. So we just kept asking. Literally, we were just like, we had looked at enough deals. We probably passed on 3 or 4 really, really good deals that we should have did in the 60 days that took us to find the first one. But we had run the numbers on this thing so many times. So I was confident in the deal. I was like, this is a deal. We're going to make money. And your risk is really low. So my confidence in the deal is what kept me going, even after like friends and family told us no. And we actually found the real estate agent who was connected to some private money and was like, oh yeah, this is what we do. And I was like, oh, like this is a business? Like you guys just loan money to people that need it? They're like, yeah. And so that developed a relationship, and we kind of went from there and ended up using them for dozens and dozens of deals again, like just over and over. And we built up rapport with them where we would have $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 out at a time with this one person that was just came from asking the question to anybody that would talk to us, really. Hey, you know anybody that wants to invest in real estate? You know, and then that's kind of, because again, I was very confident, not in my abilities to flip a house because I'd never done it before, but I had ran enough numbers on deals over that 60-day period that like I knew that we were going to make money on this thing, you know, and that their money was going to be safe. So like that made it easy to get the yes eventually, but I didn't give up because I knew I had a deal.
Now this was in 2016?
2016. So for reference, our area is, again, oil and gas was terrible. So the rest of the country is in recovery mode. They're growing. Right now, we have about 1,700 homes on our market. In the highest point of the market, we had about 900 homes, which when it was the hottest, 2021, 22. Back then, we had 3,200 homes in the market. So we had a ton of inventory, huge, huge buyer's market. But guess what? We didn't know any better. Like we were just finding deals that were in the median price point in our area and flipping those houses because we didn't know any better. We're just like, this makes sense. These numbers make sense. Recession, we were getting multiple offers when houses, the average days on market was 110 days because we were finding value and we didn't know anything other than that. Like there was nobody in our ears telling us the market wasn't good or that the market was bad. Like that wasn't a thought to us. Like we didn't know any better. So we just were like, hey, this property is worth 150, 160 fixed up. We get to buy it for 100 and put 20 grand in it. There's profit there, you know?
Right.
So we didn't get caught up in all of the market stuff just because we were too ignorant, honestly.
Interesting, bro. What was I want to talk about, just touch on real quick. And then I want to hear from Eric. The mindset around, you said that, I mean, the way you told it, it doesn't sound like it really affected you when you went to your friends and family to borrow money. And like you said, I want to make that distinction that it's not that Napoleon Hill, there's a quote from Napoleon Hill. It's one of my favorite quotes, but it says I don't remember it verbatim, but it's basically something to the tune of most people never find success because they listen to the advice of their friends, family, and neighbors. And it's like you said, it's not because they don't want you to succeed. They don't know any better. And in their mind, it's like, I want to protect you because I love you. This sounds risky. This is something I've never heard of. This is something I'm so unfamiliar with. This sounds, this is, you're taken away from somebody. And in a way, it's like, we don't talk about money. That's a 4-letter word. That's something you shouldn't do that. Did that affect your mindset or anything like that when they were kind of like, no, don't do that? And then you guys are still like, but I need to go find this money.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question, a good distinction. And yes, those times are those are the moments where you're made or broken, in my opinion. Is in
Yes.
those moments.
Yes.
What I would say is you have to have a bigger fear to overcome your current fear. And for me, I had latched onto this partner who had been the first really important male figure in my life to really invest in me, in my business partner, who was also my manager previously. And he was betting on me. Like, we got into business together. So I felt the weight of letting him down. That weight of potentially letting him down was stronger than the weight of the negative comments from my family or hearing the no's, because I felt obligated to be successful, not just for me, but for him too. Mm-hmm. And so that weight of potentially letting him down is what kind of drove me through those times where I probably, honestly, without him, would have quit,
Wow. No, I totally agree with you, dude. That's why I wanted to go back to that real quick, because just that is just such a pivotal point in anybody's life when they're making this transformation. That's the hardest part, man, is those pivots when you know that you're capable of more and you see that people are doing it. And for you to make that pivot, you know that you need to start surrounding yourself with the right people and right information. And that means you got to be a little bit more intentional with your time and who you're talking to and getting more information from. So like you said, man, it completely can make or break you. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, Logan. I appreciate you, man. Speaking of, raising money and things like that, I know you guys are doing some really cool things, but Eric has PML and Gator on his thing. So I'd love to dive a little bit more into what you have going on, Eric. What's your origin story? How did you get into this for everybody who doesn't know?
Yeah, sure. Let me try to give the Cliff Notes version as well. To start with family background and money beliefs, I don't think I had too much negative beliefs about money, but it was a certain taboo thing to talk about a lot. There's a bit of secrecy there. I never knew my dad's salary. I've got a guess at what it is right now. I still don't know what it is right now. But I was fortunate in that my grandpa in Southeast Idaho, which I think you know about, Jesse, somewhere around that region, Blackfoot, Idaho Falls, all that. He had furniture stores, and it was a lot of hard work getting them started, and it was not much money for many years, but now it's a good, successful business. So by the time I came into the picture, it was already doing well. So his story on money was like, Eric, look, money is energy. That's what it is. So I kind of had a bit of that mindset where it's like, okay, money is like a tool, you can make things happen with it. So I already had that idea. In high school, I liked math and science, engineering, nerdy stuff. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to be an engineer. I did chemical engineering undergrad and then went to grad school for biomedical engineering. Kind of that idea of somewhere between scientists tinkering around to make some advancement to the guy that saves the world for better treatments for diseases or whatever. In grad school, I was doing a lot of cancer research with magnetic nanoparticles to replace chemotherapy, and really enjoyed that. It was very, very intellectually stimulating. But when the family came along, we had twins, and one of the twins had a complicated birth. So anyways, I started just realizing that, what? It's impossible for me to be a rock star scientist and be the husband and father that I want to be at this point in my life. I just couldn't choose both of them. I looked at my mentor and everybody else at University of Florida, tier 1 research institution. If you want to kick butt in research there, it's days, nights, weekends, there's no break. And that wasn't fitting with my family. So I'm like, I've got to find something else. Mm-hmm. So I finished my PhD in biomedical engineering, and I went on to, instead of being a research professor, be a teaching professor, which is honestly a bit down the totem pole, but I still loved it. I was talking science, I was doing science, I was helping the senior design class, so helping students do their capstone, their year-long project on biomedical devices, which were related to cancer, diabetes, whatever else it was. So it was still innovative, it was still research, but it was so much less of a burden than being a research professor would have been, that I had time to dabble in real estate. So right when I made that switch from grad student to teaching professor at UF, thankfully we bought a condo in 2016 in Gainesville, Florida. And because we were just like, hey, renting is $1,000. I can get this condo for a $500 mortgage payment, and we want to try out being homeowners. So we had that condo. We're like, okay, what the heck do we do with it? We got the new job, we had the kids, we needed a bigger house. So when we moved into our actual house in Gainesville, we're like, okay, we can sell the condo, maybe we can rent it to a long-term rental, maybe, or we can do short-term rentals. So we decided to do a short-term rental on the condo. That was February of 2020 when we bought the other house. And then COVID immediately hit. And I talked with the property manager who I was going to do the Airbnb with. And they're like, well, it sucks. There's no bookings right now, but just keep trying. They'll renovate it, make it look nice, get it ready, and you'll do it. And we were shocked. The condo did so well in Gainesville, even throughout COVID. We started doing our, what we call the ranch house, this house that had 2.5 acres, another 2.5 beside it with some animals that we had. We put that on the weekends when we were traveling a few weeks at a time on Airbnb. It did super, super well just because there was so much demand for it. Like my parents, like back to money beliefs, my parents would also say, like, whenever someone had an idea, like, Dad, let's do this, Dad, let's try that. He would always say, tell me when you've made your first $1,000 on it.
So were you looking at this, waiting to hit that first $1,000 on this?
Yeah, well, and yeah, it's like, okay, Dad, we did it. We did that a few times, more times. The Airbnbs are working, we're good.
Yeah.
And they would also ask us too, like, they would say, like, how are the Airbnbs? Are they booked? What's going on? And it was almost every single time they asked us, like, let me check. Yep, there's people there. Like every single weekend it was booked. It was doing super well. 2020, 2021, 2022, great years. It's a cooled off market in general now. But anyways, that's what got me into the world of real estate. I did a few short-term rental masterminds, and then that got me looking into Burr. I did the Burr Invest Academy, and I started seeing some of the creative finance world as well. So then just with everything going on with my family, my wife is Brazilian. We made the choice to live most of our lives in Brazil at the very start of, well, we made the transition at the start of this year, the start of 2023. So we said, how can I make money without being physically present in Florida, right? So that's where Gator came in. I was looking into the creative finance and the Gator world. I joined Gator December of 2022 and started learning that, and then just started doing Gator deals where I didn't need to be physically present. That led me to Sub 2 as well. And that's how Logan and I got connected. I was doing some of the bigger Gator deals, and I heard Logan's name from our transaction coordinators, like, hey, try to do this. He might be able to work with you on these. So we started doing more and more short-term creative private money lending together.
Interesting. That is really cool. I saw Luke put in here, I'm also a biomedical engineer. I'm like, dude, as Eric's telling us, I'm like, I can't even spell half the words that are coming out of Eric's mouth right now, let alone go back and try to pronounce some of that stuff. Take me back, kind of like with Logan, dude. I feel like that is such a pivotal time in anybody's life and anybody's business. Is you get these ideas, you start to make that pivot, and then you're like, oh my gosh, like something here is actually working here. And you had just spent, like you said, you got your graduate degree. So you spent all this time and effort and energy getting a degree, going to college, thinking about money, thinking about the value that you bring to the marketplace. And that was kind of the direction that you were going. At what point, like when you started doing this Airbnb, was this kind of like, oh my gosh, wow, there's something here? Like when you had decided to do that, was that already the direction you were going, or were you kind of testing the waters? Were you kind of like half in and half out between what you were doing professionally and the real estate stuff?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, I did have a lot of people call me crazy. Even to this day, they're like, you did a PhD in biomedical engineering and now you're messing around with houses and real estate. What on earth are you thinking? Right. But from like the science and I wanted to be a researcher perspective, I already knew that wasn't the route to make the most amount of money. It was more about just, doing some good for society with a small chance that some sort of invention would go huge or some patent would make a ton of money. And then I realized that it mostly came from the family lifestyle desires, right? It was like, I can't be a research professor and have the kind of lifestyle with my family that I want, have the kind of flexibility that I want and that I need, that my young family with all the little ones needed at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I realized if I transitioned from research professor to teaching professor, then I would have more of that lifestyle. So that was a pretty easy transition, right? Teaching
Really?
professor, it was a public salary, like 90,000 went up to 97,000 a year. Anybody can Google that and see what I made. So it was good, comfortable money, especially for the cost of living in Gainesville, Florida. And I was doing a little bit of real estate on the side, a little bit of Airbnb. So that was a really comfy and easy transition. It wasn't like ice water to the face, kind of like Logan's story. Like, okay, you don't have a job now, you got to figure it out.
Yeah.
I was a teaching professor and I had much more time. I had kind of what I needed for my family. But the next transition was a little more challenging. It's like, am I really going to stop being a teaching professor and just go 100% full-time real estate? But after we started making enough money on the real estate, we're like, okay, hold on here. I can have even more freedom and even more wealth for myself and my family if I play the real estate game right than the teaching professor. So, ultimately my pie in the sky dream is to take all of this full circle, right? It might be a decade, it might be 2 decades, it might be a long time, but to just build a lot of wealth and freedom with real estate and then circle back and go back to science in a fun way, right? Go sponsor other student projects who are working on the next biomedical engineering device, go mentor some students, go help, go be involved in some sort of way on those cutting edge projects.
Interesting. So what you're saying is you're going to be a combination of Grant Cardone and Elon Musk is what I'm hearing. You're the next. If those two had a baby, that's where Eric is going in this direction.
I have never thought about it like that, but it is a bit of combination of the real estate and the science is what I hope to contribute to this world. So I guess
I love that, bro. I love that, man. Thank you for sharing that. And now, so you guys get hooked up together. You said your TC kind of introduced you guys, right?
Yep.
Now tell everybody, what is it that you guys are doing?
Yeah, so we do a lot of short-term private money deals. So we do a lot of bridge loans where some people may be buying a house and they need cash because of the deal, or maybe a commercial asset, and they need a short-term loan to buy it with other people's money. We're the other people's money now, right? And they use our money and our capital partners, right? We have a group of capital partners that we work with that they trust us to, put their funds to work. So we invest that money into these deals, and they're typically short term until they sometimes we do fix and flip. Fix and flip is not our favorite thing to do. We will do them, especially if we have a relationship with the borrower. We don't really like the construction loans. We like deals that are just deeply discounted, or they have an additional collateral property that they can put up for a short-term loan, where they're either going to go and get another private money lender to come in for long-term, or they're going to get a bank debt. Maybe we have one that we just did where we came in, they bought the land with us. It's a tear down on the house, and then they're getting a construction loan. Well, that construction loan process takes a while, but they needed to close on the land to keep the deal. So we funded the land purchase, and they're in the process of getting the construction loan, and then they'll refinance us out with the construction loan. We've done several where they had a loan that was coming due and they needed more time. And so they brought us in to take over the first lien position and take over the current debt. And we now become the lenders until they can get a more permanent solution in place. So we do a lot of short-term bridge debt, all different kinds of transactions, all different kinds of assets, all different kinds of areas. But we're typically bridging either a purchase to debt or debt to debt is what we do a lot of.
Gotcha. Okay. And guys, if you guys have any questions for Eric and Logan while we're going through this, please feel free to throw them in the chat. Now, the big question that everybody's wanting to know is, are you guys doing stuff in Alaska? Will you guys do stuff in Alaska?
Is Alaska
asking for a friend, Logan?
Eric, is Alaska a judiciary state?
Oh, that is a good question. That is one of our tests. Is it a judicial or a non-judicial foreclosure state? I'll have to check the PDF there.
Exactly. Ken wants to know.
Yes, potentially is the answer. We have a matrix that we're working on that we've kind of built out to a lot of times me and Eric honestly are using our gut feel based on the borrower and how they're responding, because we're really big on betting on the horse, not the jockey. I mean, the jockey, not the horse, right? Like the deal is the horse. Like that's great. You could have an awesome deal, but like if we're not going to make the bet on you, if we don't like you, honestly, like we're probably not going to make that bet, even if the horse is really, really strong. And so that's what we do. So we're trying to quantify that, because a lot of times it's just gut feel. There's things that happen in conversations. There's things that are said. There's just tonality and things that just spark us of like, hey, something feels off in this. We're not going to do it. We're trying to quantify that so it's a more repeatable process and a more standard process. So that's kind of what we're working on. But that is one of our questions for the deal is it a judicial or non-judicial state? Because if we have to take the property over, it's much harder for you guys that don't know what that is. It's much harder to do foreclosures in some states versus others. So we're looking at that on a state-by-state basis to see if this thing goes south, what will it look like for us? And I think Willie has a comment. Do we do second position? Yes, we will do second position deals. About half of our deals that we do are second position deals. With those second positions, we charge higher rates, and we also have a lower loan to value. So we're not going to let you borrow as much money, and we're going to charge a higher rate for those second positions, because in a lot of cases, you have much less control in the second position than you do when you're in first position. So yes, we will do second position loans. We do a lot of them.
Makes sense. Pansy asked if you guys will work in Illinois. I guess
Illinois.
Pansy's going to depend on whether or not it's judiciary or non-judiciary.
Illinois is not quite as bad as some of the biggest bad ones like New York and California. I mean, lovely, amazing places to visit. But when you talk about the foreclosure laws of those states, Illinois, unfortunately, is a little bit trickier. So that's not saying we would absolutely not do a deal there. It would just be a little bit longer for us to vet it and to set up our structure to protect ourselves as lenders. So, and a lot of that is just the judicial versus non-judicial foreclosure. So judicial, sounds like judge. That means it has to go through a court process. So if you foreclose on it, it could get stuck in the courts for 6 months, a year, 2 years. And you don't know who's even going to buy it. If it's a certain type of auction, there might be buyers on the county courthouse steps who haven't even seen the house and don't even know how beautiful it is. Just give a super low ball offer, and then you don't make hardly any of your money back. Versus a non-judicial foreclosure, you can go through the process much faster and easier, and then just get the house for you to be able to resell it. So it does make a big difference on what you're able to do in each state.
Amazing.
The weight and preparation of the borrower will sway us in those situations, Pansy. Like those are the things that put us over the edge. We're not hard money lenders. We're not an institution. There's no hedge fund behind us. We're loaning our personal money and a small group of other investors that invest with us their personal money. We're not a big giant bank, right? So we are okay. We don't have a box to play in. We get to make our own box, right? So if you come and you're like, all right, you have realistic comps, like you sent us a really, really good comps. You have a construction budget done by a contractor. Like you have all your ducks in a row, and we're really confident in your ability to execute, then we know that the likelihood that we're going to have to foreclose is considerably lower. So we don't have to weight that as much, because we know that possibility is much lower. So then we can say, hey, we're willing to make this bet because we know the chance of this foreclosure is really low. Whereas if it's very haphazard, the comps are not realistic, there's no construction budget, just nothing is prepared and in order on the front end when you make the ask for the money, then we know, hey, look, that doesn't always mean that it's going to go south, but there's a much higher probability because this person has clearly not done their due diligence to get to this point and should buy this house. Will we still do some of those loans? We will, but we're gonna weight some of the things like the state and the foreclosure process a lot heavier, because we know it's a greater possibility that we're going to go there with borrowers that are unprepared, not communicating clearly, not communicating efficiently. So these are all things that we're looking for when we're having those conversations. So sometimes the conversation is not even about what we say. It's just about Did you show up for the call on time? Did you know the answers to the questions? We don't even care sometimes what the answers to the questions are, simply that you've done the legwork to know the answer to the question. As crazy as that sounds, you know?
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yep, this is something too where it might seem like we're sticklers about some parts of it, but when you're loaning money in second position, you really have to be. I talked with a much older, wealthier real estate investor, and he said, Eric, every single person I know that's invested money, this loan money in second position has made a fortune and then lost all of it. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is happening here? So I talked to them in more details, like, okay, well, how'd they lose the money? What happened? And a lot of it went into these things that we're talking about. You know, these investors who were doing second position loans were making great returns on lots of them, but then they didn't look into the foreclosure laws or legally what would happen, their downside risk. So they got stuck with homes for 2 years where their money was out and then they never got that money back and all that kind of things. So we do have a very strict process about it, but that's just to protect our second position loans. You've got to do it if you're going to be in this game for the long term. You know, some people go up to very high loan to values in second position. We don't do that. We actually go lower loan to values in second position than we do in first position. First position, we like to stay around 70%. Second positions, we like to be even lower than that, just to have enough equity to protect us if things go south. You know, you can be a second position lender and make a ton of money if you start going up to higher LTVs, because everybody's going to want to do that project with you, but it's going to come back to bite you sooner or later.
For sure.
Yep.
Real quick, give me 3 things between the two of you that, in your experience, I feel like I at least talk to maybe at least one, maybe 2 people a week who are brand new PMLs and they have never done a deal before. Give me 3 things that in your guys' experience would be very resourceful or something to be very cognizant of as a brand new PML who hasn't done a deal and looking to start lending.
Great question, Jesse. The first thing is, if you're not an expert, do business with one, right? So if you're not an expert at PML, then you need to have someone on your team that is an expert, right? Maybe that's you're doing a joint venture with another Gator or another PML that has more experience. Like, that's a really, really practical way to reduce your risk, is to partner with someone that has more experience. Just like, you know, Pace teaches in sub 2, just like, it's like, hey, get connected with somebody that has experience. That can greatly reduce your risk. 2, never, ever, ever wire money to anyone but title, right? Like, the money only goes to title exclusively, right? And I would say the third thing is be confident in the deal. Like, if you are not confident, if there is something that makes you uncomfortable, the answer is always no, right? Like, you should be trying to talk yourself out of deals, and they should be so good that you have to say yes because they're that good. So those are the things that I would say are important: is never wire money anywhere to title, and make sure the paperwork's all done, right? And you don't have that done, you should have a transaction coordinator to help you do that. But the most important thing is more of a gut thing, because that's how I do a lot of business, is like, hey, if something doesn't seem right, if something is off, it's really easy to feel pressure from the borrower and from the title company and from other parties involved. Guess what? It's not the borrower's money. It's not the title company's money. It's not anybody else's money. It's your money. So you have the right to say, hey, we're going to pause this until I get all of these things, these hurdles crossed, so I can feel comfortable, and then we'll do it. Right. And so I would tell them that up front. It's like, hey, look, I'm interested in doing this. Like, everything has to check out and I have to be comfortable to do the deal. Because a lot of times what happens is, especially with new people, they get excited, they have a deal, they have opportunity, it looks like a great return, and then there's pressure, and they might even say maybe. But when you're a borrower and you're hungry for money, all you hear is yes. This person said yes, right? Like, they don't, like, it's not, there's nothing wrong with that. They're just excited. Like, there's probably 20 things that I blew through in conversations when I was first getting started that people told me that I was just like, whoa, that's what you actually said? Because I'm just so excited that somebody was even entertaining the idea that to do a deal with me, right? So I'm not trying to cast blame on the borrowers, but they do get excited and they hear what they want to hear. And as the PML, you can feel some pressure where you're like, hey, I gave you a maybe, and you're operating like it's a yes now. You have to be able to stand there as the PML and say, hey, no, look, it's still a maybe until 1, 2, and 3 happen, until X, Y, and Z. Like, it's your money, you're in charge of the transaction, right? You're always be the buyer.
Dude, I love that. Talk about that real quick. That is such a concept. What you just ended with, where to always be the buyer. Even if you're the seller, you can be the buyer.
Always.
Talk about that for a second, because that is such a transformational concept that applies to so much more than just this. But go into what that means real quick. I think a lot of people get a lot of value from hearing what that means. Always be the buyer. Always
be the buyer. So there's always another opportunity. This goes back to what we originally started with, Jesse, is like the 4-letter word, right? Is like that's a scarcity mindset of there's not going to be another deal. There's not going to be, whenever we are the buyers, we know that we're going to the car lot and there's 100 cars for sale. And we get to pick the one. And guess what? If this dealership doesn't have one, we're going to go to the next one. Like, remember a situation when you went into something as a buyer where you didn't really need to do it, right? And you knew that there was plenty of inventory. How did you act? What was your posture? Like, how did you operate in those transactions? Very differently than when somebody says, hey, there's only one left and you got to get it now, right? And you're like, oh man, it's COVID. I don't have no toilet paper. I'll do whatever I can to buy this last roll, right? I'll pay $100 for it because I have to have it, right? You were not the buyer in that situation. You were just a scarcity buyer. So like, when I say always be the buyer, know that there's always another deal. There's always another opportunity. Like, there is always another one coming around. So it is better to pass on okay deals and feel confident and only take the ones that you know have a very strong feeling are going to be a base hit. They don't have to be all home runs, but that in the world of PML that you have a very, very high level of confidence that money is coming back out of there before you put it in. So that's when I say be the buyer. It's like, just think in that abundant mindset that there's going to be another one. There's always another deal. Literally, there's always a new person getting into real estate every day that needs money. So even if you burned every single bridge on the planet, right, with the current market, there's always new people getting into real estate that need money, right? So there is always someone there for you to loan money to. And same thing as when, I know you guys work with a lot of people that are getting started doing wholesaling. There's always another seller. There's always another house. There's always another property. There's always another circumstance. So when you bring that attitude in, you don't get that, trying to get date to the prom and everybody already has a date and you're running out of girls, right? Like, you don't want to be that clingy, needy buyer, right?
Yeah, bro. That is so funny that you brought that up, man. That's literally like how I think about everything. Just what you said, just that concept. And like Billy Burke said here, like, always be the buyer. That if you can understand that concept and start applying that to every aspect of your life, it'd be crazy how much your life starts to change and you start getting out of that scarcity. I got to get the last toilet paper, so to speak. But it's so funny you brought that up, because that's the exact scenario that I always think in my head. Like, regardless of any situation, whether I'm going to buy a car, whether I'm going to buy a house, whether I'm working with another partner, whatever. One is if I wouldn't do it 10 times, then don't do it once. If you get a bad vibe about this person or how they're communicating or how they're presenting or even how they reached out, I'm sure you guys have had this happen to you guys as well, where you get a text from somebody and they're asking for something and you're like, great, who the hell is this? Thanks for even introducing yourself. That alone just speaks volumes. Yeah. And if you wouldn't do it 10 times, then don't do it once. And going back to your prom, man. Dude, that's exactly right, man. And approach everything in your life from the aspect of, I don't need to take you to the prom. I've got 10 other girls that I can go take. If you can approach everything in your life, if you get nothing else from this podcast, which you guys have just been dropping freaking bombs here, just that one concept alone, man, will change everything for you, to include the people that you work with, PMLs, JV partners, all that kind of fun stuff. Right now, go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, another thing too is that I see a lot of newer gators who want to do these deals with really, really big returns, or newer private money lenders, I should say, that that want to do these. And a lot of these deals that I see, I'm like, yeah, that one's really risky. It doesn't look good. I wouldn't do it. And I can feel them like, oh, I want to do it. I want to do it. The one thing I say is like, I want to sleep well at night. I don't want to lend my money on any private money deal where I'm just wondering like, ooh, am I covered? Is it good? Is it going to come back? I want to know that I did it right. I did the paperwork right. I did the deal right. And I'm sleeping well. I'm not nervous about is my money coming back or not, because we did it the right way. So if you want to sleep well at night as a private money lender, you have to be very cautious and conservative. You're not like Logan said, you're not like a hedge fund or something where you've got 1,000 deals out. And if a certain percentage of them just completely they're a total loss, then that's okay. You know, we don't do total losses. We sleep well at night, we do it right, and we recover our money.
I love that, bro. You mentioned paperwork in there. Chris, are you here?
I believe so. Can you guys hear me?
Somebody get the can with the string. Dude, talk to us a little bit about the paperwork that needs to go into something like this, especially when you got lenders, whether they're PML, whether they're Gator lenders. What does that look like? What are some things that people should be cognizant of when it comes to the paperwork? So as Eric said, you can sleep well at night.
Well, first and foremost, I do want to apologize for this entire hour. So when it comes to paperwork, there's a lot of different nuances, right? Depending on the state laws, you want to make sure it mirrors that. But to make sure you want protected before going into it, you want to ensure that the relationship is there. I think Logan hit the nail right on the head. More so specifically be the buyer due to the fact of you're going into a long relationship. If that relationship is not there, you don't trust the individual you're lending money to, why even proceed there? That's step one. Step two is more so having a great TC. A great TC or if you know how to facilitate the paperwork, that's phenomenal. But still, you guys could be the best of friends, but get it on paper and also ensure that it's secured as well. So, you know, whether that's a secured promissory note with a deed of trust and or a mortgage, depending on the specific state. And there's also JV agreements, depending on what level of the amount or whatever it looks like. I know there's 100 different ways you can actually JV or even lend, right? Some people like to do equity. Some people like to do, 6 months for whatever that looks like on that specific deal. But first and foremost, just make sure you always have that relationship there before even trying to proceed that, especially first-time lenders. First-time lenders, they hear about all the, returns and what that looks like. Just make sure it's a great deal. And make sure you vet the deal yourself. Don't just do it because someone stated it was a great deal. Try to do your research as well, because you don't want to be in a situation where you don't receive your money back or the individual ghosts you.
Absolutely. Solid advice. I know one of the things that Chris and I tried to do anytime that we're working with, any sort of a PML, but especially the newer PMLs, a lot of times they don't know what they're looking at. And so one of the first things we do is we obviously establish a relationship, present the offer, and then instead of just expecting them to take our word, we say, hey, let's hop on a Zoom. And I want to walk you through exactly how I got to this. I want you to see the comps. I want you to see the numbers. Here's the bid. Here's X, Y, and Z. I want you to see everything behind the curtain. And a lot of times it just serves as having double eyes just to make sure that you're good, even though you've looked it over and looked it over and looked it over and looked it over. You can't go wrong just having somebody else say, hey, here's how I got to this. This is what I'm looking at. Does this also make sense to you? We've had my team look at it. We've looked at it several times. Blah, 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 blah. Logan or Eric, what do you think about that? Is that something else that you guys look at and you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, no, this makes sense?
Yeah, man, I actually heard something on a podcast, Jesse, it was kind of a perspective shifter for me. And the guy was talking about doing really, really big multifamily deals, like 400 or 500 unit deals. These are, $60, $70 million deals. And he's like, I have security when I go into these deals because the partners that are involved, the banks, the appraisers, the insurance guys, they're all even the equity partners at that level are all very sophisticated. So they're not going to let me buy a bad deal. Yes. Because they are not going to get involved in a bad deal because they're so good at what they do. And I thought that was a really good perspective. And sometimes we look at, other people in the deal as hurdles. And to go to what you just said is like, they can be safety. You can borrow their experience. And maybe you thought it was a great deal. And when you get that feedback on it, and that may be actually helpful to you to say, all right, maybe I missed something here. Like, let me go back and look at this. or maybe that wasn't the right flavor for that investor and it wasn't the right investor. But sometimes you just don't have a deal. And if you get 4 or 5 guys that are giving you the same feedback, you need to go back to the drawing board and say, hey, like, they're trying to tell me something. Let me take this advice and rework it. So I think that's a great perspective. And, again, they're experienced people in the deal are not hurdles. They can be safety.
Dude, yes. And like you said, to bring this back bring this circle back around, like you guys said, it's the jockey, not the horse. And they don't have to have all the information right there, but how are they presenting themselves? What is their real intention behind what it is they're trying to do and how they're trying to work with you? I know we've gone a minute over. Thank you guys very much for being over here. The age-old question, Willie Ingram asks, how can we connect deals to you guys? Where can everybody connect with you guys? How can they do deals with you? Where are you guys at? You guys on Twitter? Do you guys respond to tweets? Are you on the gram?
I'm on Instagram and I have a Twitter, but like no followers. So it's not my space. Facebook is my primary place. So if you guys shoot us a Facebook message, that's the easiest way to get connected with us. And we have a link that we'll send out for you to fill out if you have a deal. Or if you guys are connectors on here, we also have a connector form that we send out that it comes straight into our Asana and we can evaluate the deal, give you feedback on it, set up a call. So that's the easy ways. If you reach out to us through Facebook, we can send you guys those links if you're either a connector or a borrower and you want us to look at one of your deals.
Beautiful. Amazing. Guys, I just want to reiterate this real quick because we have a series that we do every single week for connectors. In case you guys missed that, in case you guys just heard, I'm going to reach out to these guys for money. If you are a connector and somebody's looking for money, they have that direct avenue and a plug-in for you guys. So make sure you guys are getting connected, reaching out to these guys, building that relationship. Eric, Logan, any last words before we part ways? Thank you guys again so much. This has been absolutely fruitful beyond belief. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been great to be here. I appreciate everybody's participation in the comments as well. Just to be thorough, I think Luke asked if we'll cover 100% of a flip if the comps are there and a purchase deep enough. So yes, we can do up to 100% financing if the deal is right and everything else lines up. It's not every time we do it, but yes, we could do it. So yeah, we appreciate everybody being here and we will like to connect with you and see what we can do together for sure. Thank you for having us, Jesse. Thank you, Chris. It's been great being on here.
Yeah, and I guess I'll just give a little bit of inspiration here at the end. This is the thing that I enjoy the most is, guys, all the things that we're doing are fun and it's exciting. And like, here's the thing. Don't take this too serious. You should have your ducks in a row, but like, if you make more than $30,000 a year, you're in the richest 1% of the world. So you have already won the game. If you live in America, and you make more than 30 grand a year, you've already won the game. You've won the generic lottery, right? Like you've already won. So go have fun. And this is supposed to be fun. This is not supposed to be painful. Like go have fun and realize like that this has no real eternal value of what you're doing now. So like, this is just a game. So have fun. Like this is not going to matter for eternity. So enjoy what you're doing today.
I love that. I love that.
Hit the nail on the head, brother. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, guys. If you guys got some value from today, please give Eric and Logan some love. Chris and I, we have people on here so you guys can like the entire point of this podcast, House of Cards, right? Because as you guys have heard, real estate, you never know what hand you're going to get dealt. You might get into escrow. You might have an inspection, come by and you're like, holy crap, we got a foundational issues. The roof's got to be replaced. We got to do an entire, whatever. And you never know that until you get into it. You never know what hand you're going to get dealt. So being able to have the amazing and high caliber individuals like Eric and Logan on here to share their experience and be a resource and an asset for you guys is beyond belief. And we do it so you guys can stack your deck. So I appreciate you guys again. Thank you guys for being here. If you guys got value from today, please, the only thing that we ask, tell somebody about this, share this with somebody. I know I'm certainly going to everywhere. This was absolutely phenomenal. There were so many great nuggets dropped, and we appreciate all of you guys being here midday Saturday. Eric and Logan, thank you guys again. Chris, any last words before we part ways, brother?
I just want to say I apologize for today. I apologize. This rarely happens. We have a storm over here in Rochester, so I didn't expect it to come swinging through quickly. Actually, there you go. Light's coming on now. But yeah, Logan, Eric, you guys are amazing. You guys are truly inspiration. Jesse and I talk about you guys all the time, and we love what you guys are doing. We love that you guys are finding ways to provide value to the community, and just keep doing what you're doing, man.
We're very grateful for your guys' friendship, for the relationship that we have. Excited for what some of the things we have got going on moving forward. And dude, we're just out here all having fun with it, man. So great words of wisdom. Appreciate you guys. Hope you guys have an amazing rest of your weekend, and we'll chat with you soon.
Awesome. Thank y'all.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.